Well, hello. I'd like to welcome you today to the webinar on technology for watershed stewardship nonprofits. Um, it's brought to you by the Columbia Basin Watershed Network, and I wanted to focus in on some key issues that are challenges, technology challenges for those of us in the watershed stewardship nonprofit area. A few things before we begin. Some of you may experience some connection issues. I'm going to start with the group on a blanket mute, but pretty quickly I'm going to be allowing, I'm going to go in and enable you guys to talk because it's a pretty small group. And then, at the end, we will have really what I hope will be a discussion of the technologies we go over today. It's a big area, and you have to make a certain number of assumptions about the background and knowledge of people that are joining, and so it'll really be helpful for me to be able to talk to those of you who are attending. So if you do get disconnected, just rejoin using the link that you got with your registration email, and just sign back in. So why don't I just go ahead and make it so that those of us who are here can talk. I'll just promote you guys to panelists. So what this means is you can decide if you want to be on mute, or I suppose I can mute you, or right now I can see the tops of your heads in your webcams. So it's just a very small group here. There, hi Rick. Why don't I just go ahead and unmute you guys? We had, I don't know. Anyway, welcome everyone. So anybody whose dog starts to bark, you can unmute yourself in the little box where your webcam currently is. So I'm actually going to be talking today. I'm the speaker today. I'm senior manager with the Columbia Basin Watershed Network, and I'm a consultant. And I also am a rural policy fellow, natural resources with the Rural Policy Learning Commons. So that's who I am. And actually, just before, well, I'll do the introduction and then I'll get you guys to introduce yourselves. So where I'm coming from on this is there's so much rapid change in our communications technology. I find that on this board and the other boards that I'm on a community forest board, that we're always trying to figure out what technology is best to use so that we can collaborate and so that we can communicate to our members and to the community at large. And I just wanted to share some of the work that we've done and that I've learned from the several boards that I'm on in terms of what are some workable solutions, relate those to the top challenges for watershed stewardship nonprofits. So here's some recent, I think I saw this a couple days ago. The Canadian Freshwater Alliance just came out with the results of their survey, which is very close to the results of our survey in terms of what are the top 10 challenges for freshwater stewardship nonprofits. And I think they're shared with many other kinds of nonprofits that I work with. But of the top 10 challenges, we have capacity, which is just people power to get things done, influencing decisions, influencing the public, funding, recruiting volunteers, engaging volunteers, convening partners. And down there, 9 and 10 is knowledge gaps and time to go paddling or, you know, be in the water. So what I notice, and part of the reason for this, is that 5 of those top 10 challenges are directly related to what I would call communication and engagement issues. How do we talk to our members and our people, and how do we get people to work all pulling in the same direction? So the focus of this is really on some of those technologies of collaboration and engaging communication with board members, volunteers, decision makers, and the public. So how I see those out of the top 10 challenges, you know, how do you, you know, you have capacity in your board members and your volunteers. How do you actually get them to engage with you and help you move your mission forward? How do we get people to share, I guess, our sense of priority in terms of water stewardship and the rest of our missions? How do we recruit volunteers and then put them to work to increase our capacity? And how do we convene our partners, you know? And part of that is how we frame issues, but part of that is just making it possible for people to see what we're doing, give us some feedback, you know, that how do we actually meet with people and bring them together? Now, in the Watershed Network in the Columbia Basin, there's no way we can do this with all, you know, technology. We out here are really fond of actually seeing people in person, and I think that's a part of this work as we sort of, as a society, move from being used to being able to have meetings and work in person to more how do we get that same relationship building and mission sharing and work that effectively across larger spaces and geographies. So instead of using those polls, I thought that I would just like get you guys to talk, perhaps. I want to hear, you know, who are, like, what are you guys' involvement with watershed stewardship? You know, are you on a board or in some other role? And what of these technological challenges, by which I mean, how do you relate with email, and, you know, what's bugging you? And we'll see how this goes. So let's start with Rick.
Can I just speak as I'm not being heard?
You're very quiet, Rick.
Oh, okay. Maybe I should get closer, or?
Yes, that's way better.
That's way better?
Yeah.
I sit on the board for the Kettle River Watershed Management Authority. And I think that all of the top 10 issues that you identified are there in one form or another. Now, in terms of technology, I live in Kelowna, and I'm an active and engaged board member. However, it's a 3.5-hour drive to Grand Forks, which is where the regional district's offices are. And sometimes they have meetings in Christina Lake. Sometimes they have meetings in Midway. Sometimes they have meetings in Greenwood, but mostly it's centered in Grand Forks. So we've tried, or at least they've tried, to initiate using Skype so that we can communicate at regular intervals as a board. They've tried GoToMeeting and so on and so forth, but it really doesn't, so far we haven't found a technological fix that really helps us all. The best is, as you've said, Tara, you guys prefer face-to-face. I think it's old-fashioned. I think it's probably not for millennials, but it seems to work if you can do it. The problem, as you pointed out, is logistics, capacity, logistics, funding. For example, they want to have a meeting in the evening coming up, And I've said, well, that's going to require a vehicle and an overnight stay. Well, they have no money for that. So, you know, I agree with you. We're struggling. We're working through different technological fixes. And I'm pretty sure other groups that are far flung have the same issues. So maybe back to the group. I'm just sharing my experiences.
Okay. Jody?
Yeah.
Where are you? And
oh, okay. I'm from Manitoba, Winnipeg, and I do. Maybe I'll take my. I'm the manager of the Same River Conservation District. So we do watershed management in southeastern Manitoba, agricultural areas, and we definitely tend to do more in-person meetings a lot, and that face-to-face component I think is really valuable for any age that we're part of. We're lucky that we have a small enough area that we're able to drive across our whole district within 2 hours ish. So that kind of works for us. We have a blog that we run. We do a lot of emails now with all of our volunteers. That's good, but we find it very challenging still trying to convince landowners and producers on sustainable methods for like water storage on the land and nutrient reduction to Lake Winnipeg. That's kind of what we're struggling with, and how to put a dollar figure, because they want to know money bottom lines, right? So what am I losing if I'm losing fertilizer down the drain? And we're finding that just really, really tough to have to bring all those pieces together and to develop these large-scale business models on what the cost benefit is on storing water on the land and reducing nutrient loading. So and it comes back to capacity and like all your partners being involved, and largely our board is made up of farmers, so we don't really have like that deep pool of the broader sense of backgrounds to rely on that maybe other boards would have. So, but yeah, and then dealing with that overindulgent amount of information that's out there and staying current on the information that we need to be looking at in agriculture and sustainability. So it can be very overwhelming. And
so it sounds like some of your challenges are around, you know, shared values and messaging and making sure that you're hitting the communications target, like on, you know, dealing with landowners. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure how much of that we're really going to talk about today, because I'm going to be focusing more on the technology.
Tara, could I ask Jody a question?
Yeah.
Jody, what have you found are your best means of communicating with your constituents? Give me the top 2 or 3.
Well, I think we have a blog that we send out monthly, like a monthly newsletter blog. That's been really great. And we do that by email. So that's been really great. And we also do I just lost my train of thought. Sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, but I would say that, I mean, that's been really huge for us, and then we do face-to-face meetings monthly as well, so that's a big one, and then yeah, and then we do tours, like on the ground tours once in a while.
Yes.
That's been a huge one. So those are probably and local media. The local media has been massive. We've got like, 3 different media representatives that constantly ask me questions that they want answers to. So that's really neat that they're not just writing stories. They actually come to us and say, well, what do you guys think? What are you doing for nutrient loading? And what do you think with the farming industry?
And when they write a story, Jody, what do you do with it? Do you put it on your blog or email it or amplify it on Facebook or LinkedIn? How do you treat the free press that you get?
Yeah, basically we'll blog the story, and then also like kind of match it up with the same day that it's being released. And that's tend to work well. So it's hard.
Okay, let's hear from Diana. Can you introduce yourself and tell us about your challenges? Let's see, I've just unmuted you.
Out of Manitoba, like Jody. I'm with Southern Health Santé Sud, which is a regional health authority.
I'm having trouble with her audio.
Let me just mute Jody because I think Jody's got some background noise there. Okay, Diana?
Should I start again?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can hardly hear you.
Okay, well, I'm not quite sure where my speaker is, but I'm trying to peek into the computer a bit more. I'm from Manitoba. I work for Southern Health Santé Sud, and I am a healthy living facilitator with public health. And we have an interest around water as a determinant of health and helping communities become healthier or stay healthier. But I have no expertise and very little knowledge about watersheds. And so that was one of the reasons that I wanted to listen today. I can't tell you if I have any problems with technology in regards to that, because like I said, it's not my area. But what I do know is that the general population has a very low understanding of watersheds and what people that work on watershed committees and groups actually do. So I'm interested from that standpoint.
That's a really excellent point, and it underlies, I think, what we're doing here. We've just had another person join. No, I'm just going to also have. I'm gonna keep muting as we go along. There. Okay, so just like wave at me if you'd like to speak again. So what I'm hoping for this session and what I prepared for today for this little webinar is that this is sort of, I work on things better if I kind of have a big picture understanding of what I'm trying to put together. And I guess my perspective is really from a staff person's perspective in terms of how much time and effort it takes me to go between the website and the newsletter and the blog and the and certain kinds of social media. That kind of that's sort of where I'm coming from in this presentation. So what I'm hoping is that you'll be able to think about what technologies you're using for communications and engagement and relate them to what are your key challenges, like knowledge, engagement, and who are you trying to bring on board, get their feet wet, and be able to develop and recommend a technology usage plan, which we've kind of grown organically in the Watershed Network. I think we had a big overall look at it like 4 years ago, and since then we've just been kind of adjusting little by little. But I find it's really important that the technology suits the people, like what are their technological abilities and their adjustments and how much time are they committing to your organization, is appropriate in cost, like free often, is relatively simple to use. And I want you guys to basically sort of feel more confident in considering new technologies. So let me just see, I'm going to try unmuting Kurt, so just can you just introduce yourself if you have a mic? Okay. Well, Kurt, if you have questions or something, just go ahead and use, or questions or comments, go ahead and use the question and answer box. And I will try to keep an eye out for that. So in putting this sort of big picture together, it's really the point of our organization is really about moving our missions forward. increasing people's knowledge about watersheds and how land use practices affect water. And to do that, we have to be able to engage our people, you know, get their capacity, get it all pushing in the same direction so that they can collaborate, share their work, share their values, and be moving in the same direction, engage other people. Just sort of, in some ways, raise the priority. We're like fish in the water, where for the most part, you don't really know how much you value it until the well runs dry. And so this is part of the communication task, is making things more visible and engaging, and making sure that we're listening to those people that have different perspectives, and then building that larger group so that we can have more influence. And so within that model, within that, how do we use all these wonderful new technologies, and how do we fit them to the people that we're working with and what our organizations need? So again, this is sort of how I need to think about this for my organization in terms, and it's worked pretty well for me on the community forest, thinking about this way. Community forest is regionally very small and everybody's really close, but we still have a tremendous amount of information that we have to go through and somehow relate that to the community. So what I've come thinking about is circles of communication and circles of engagement. And so we have sort of a first circle. I should have done a picture of this, but our sort of first circle is our internal board and project teams. We have a second circle, which is our larger group of volunteers who are not necessarily designing the projects, but are helping us actually work on things. And then we have a third circle, which is maybe internal, maybe external to the organization, which is, at least our organization, we have about 400 members. So those people are not all regular volunteers for the Watershed Network. They're involved in different groups around the basin. Like geographically, from one corner of the Columbia Basin to another, it's about a 12-hour drive. So we're quite spread out. And the water issues are different between just even things like shortage and flooding. This can be in one place or in two different places. So that's our sort of third circle. And then the special one is, how do we relate to those decision makers in a political sphere, which are, I'd say, part of the third circle, but you know, we have to give them some special attention. So my first thing is, who are our people in those circles? We have, and I guess, you know, we have quite a variety of technological competence and comfort in terms of working online and working sort of through technology. So, and they're not always the same on these different circles of, you know, our first circle, our second circle, third circle, we might have, you know, and so in terms of the technology, what I'm trying to say is the demographics are different, and their needs are different in terms of communications. Let me just go back here. So in my context, I'm thinking about in terms of what are their roles in terms of communications. Are we trying to have people collaborate and help us plan? Are we trying to recruit or engage or just get some support? How frequently are we communicating with these different circles? And so what kinds of tools help with this? So for each circle, when you're sort of planning out what the technologies are you're going to use, for each circle, are they comfortable with and can they work on the cloud? And for us, this is a huge issue because of the distance. What kind of devices are they currently using? I put in rotary dial phone just for sort of a joke, but it's not really that much of a joke. We have people who really don't have much internet connectivity, in some parts of our region and some of our constituents. And given their level of involvement and commitment with your organization currently, how much kind of adjustment and new learning are you going to be able to help your people do? So I'm going to spend a lot of time just talking about that first circle, because when you're on a board or you're on a project team, especially with water stewardship groups, it's often not your main job, but you do it kind of off the table or off the side of your desk, or so there's certain advantages with your first circle communications, which is that you have clear shared values, shared mission, and shared goals, and you often don't have to worry as much about your language choices. You know, you don't have to be concerned that you might be alienating people by using, you know, by your priority that you place on your value for water. So some of the disadvantages or the challenges with the first circle is sort of the volume of communication and the number of things that you need people to go through, to understand. And then that issue of how much adjustment are they willing to make. So the technologies we're talking about in the first circle that I think most of us are using are, many people are using or trying to use, email, which is a real bugbear for me, just because it can be so easily overwhelming to have, you know, 4 different email addresses and hundreds of emails coming in a day. So there's certain project management softwares that I want to talk about, which help to allow you to keep, you know, when your first circle people decides, okay, now I'm going to work on this task, can they find what they're supposed to do? So that's project management and file sharing software. Conference calling, like Rick mentioned, we have quite a bit of experience with in the basin, because in rural areas, it's not just necessarily people's comfort with being online, it's also things like their bandwidth and their the setups they have at home. And so how do you do conference call and sort of online meetings? So I think I'm going to skip over this one, because we have nice long introductions, and so the poll was, I was imagining a larger group here. So what do we need with our first circle? We need to have conversation, we need to have back and forth communication. We often want to be working collaboratively on documents or editing this and that and sharing things around. And you need to, much more than for business kinds of organizational kinds of solutions, you need to have people who are able to set their own availability. And when they go to work on something, they need to be able to find it and read it and make their comments and make sure that those are other people can find those, and those things all have to fit with the abilities of the group. So I know it's been you know, I have quite a range of technological comfort levels on both of the boards I'm most active on right now. So when I think about some of the variety of solutions that boards are using with that board and director, so to me, some of the, along the left-hand column there, we have, we have basically email plus paper, which I guess we've been using with local housing society. We mostly use that, but we're able to all meet in person and have these giant long working meetings. We have an email with just a file share system is a configuration we sometimes have. Now a file share system is something like a Dropbox or a Google Drive or another one called Sync, so that you can either on the cloud or hosted on your own computer, you can access the files that people are talking about and then just have email for communications beyond that. there's email and project management software. So there's a few really quite low cost project management things, like Asana and Basecamp and Trello, and there's ActiveX. So those allow you to sort of group people by the project that they're working on. It's like an online committee, and that's how we use them in the Watershed Network. So you can say, okay, who's going to work on that, and you put them together in an online environment and trade documents back and forth on that. There's, in one situation, we're trying email project management and file share all together, which starts to get a little bit beyond some of the people I deal with. It starts to get beyond people's comfort level, but there's a reason for doing that. And then there's these integrated organizational systems that I know we're considering, but they're like it's like a barrier. You have to be at a certain scale to go for some of these, even though they're not necessarily all that expensive. So I tried to arrange these by how geography, and that second, how much computer savvy do you need for these kinds of configurations? What geography, well, like what's the distance in the drive times from top to bottom? So email and paper really only works if you can actually all meet together in a room. So then along with that, there's how much adjustment or learning or new programs on your computer do you need from your members in your first circle? How much connectivity and bandwidth do you need? Whether or not you need any staff time or tech time to help you learn it, and some sort of examples. So within that, there are different choices. Your costs are they're quite variable. Like email and project management software, there's some free solutions. You can go up to $250 a year. And then the email, sorry, I didn't put a cost in here because it starts to really vary. But if you're trying to do email project and file share as a nonprofit, you can go from about free to about $500 a year on those. Dropbox alone, it can be $100 if you're starting to deal with things like maps. There's a free version, but there's information limits on those. So I just wanted to sort of give that big picture. I know it's a complicated slide. I'm going to talk about some of the specifics of our experience. And again, just wave your hand if you want to jump in on your experience with some of this stuff. So in terms of file sharing, now this is when file sharing is, again, it's either situated on the cloud or it's something that syncs with a file in your computer. I really like the ones that sync with the file in your computer, in part because our internet where I live can be, we tend to get power outages and then our internet goes down for sometimes 2 or 3 days at a time. So this is a rural issue, I believe. So that's something that I always keep in mind when I'm looking at these solutions, because in the Columbia Basin, at least, a lot of people have that kind of thing and sometimes lower bandwidth. So when we look at file sharing, we have these wonderful things. In fact, the main problem, I think, is that different organizations are choosing different technologies. So I, in fact, I'm currently using all of these, which I don't recommend. But in terms of what each of these are best for, the Dropbox it has some really good features in terms of just it allows a lot of people to just view the files for free. And then, so you can, then it's just, you don't have to pay more when you need to share it with more people. So that's nice. And it has some features that allow you to control file sharing and how much access someone has. All of these have that, but Dropbox is probably the best for that. The OneDrive is something that's connected to Microsoft products. So you get a certain amount of OneDrive storage free if you have Office subscription. So if a lot of your people already have Microsoft Office on their computers, then they're going to also already have access to this. And it's good for, starts to get a little bit, it's good where you want the files to stay stable, but what does that mean? That means that the presentation, the formatting of the files is going to be the same no matter who looks at them. So the Microsoft world is kind of a little bit better for that. And then Google is better when you have more millennials. I'm just going to say that in terms of around your volunteers, because Google is so on the cloud. It's harder for some of us older folks to really grasp, but it has some real advantages in terms of price and in terms of your ability to integrate. It's sort of, Google, I think, is kind of like the Borg. It's sort of hard to resist going with Google. And so they have this file sharing called Google Drive, which you get quite a bit of storage completely for free. And it has the closest thing to real time. You can work on a document with someone else and see their changes in almost real time. As long as you have, you've got the bandwidth, you can actually be talking to someone and working on the document with them at the same time, which is could be a relationship builder. For project management, we've been using Basecamp mostly in the Watershed Network, and I have some experience with Asana, which is free, we haven't switched over to Asana as a Watershed Network, but we use it with some groups in the Slocan. Trello also has a free version. And there's another one that we use in the community forest called ActiveX. So first of all, I just wanted to know how many of you guys, just wave it. Do you use something like this right now with your First Circle teams? No? No? Oh, well, that's interesting. Well, what these things allow you to do is, I guess I already said this, set up sort of, you can, as a staff person, you can say, okay, this person's in this group, and this person's in this group, and this person's in this group. And within that group, you can post documents to it. So I have one project that I call the Treasurer Project, where I put anything that I need approval for with the treasurer and the other signers, so that I have all the financial stuff for the board on the Treasurer Project. Another one called General Board things. And the thing that I really like about these technologies is that within each of those projects, you can have a conversation. You might get an email notice, but unlike email, you don't have to search through your email for the last 20 comments on something or the last 10 comments on something. They're all in the project on Basecamp. So when you log in and look at it, they all work the same way. When you go in and look at it, all the comments and all the discussion are still there, and along with the files that are being talked about. So I love these things. To me, one of the hardest things about being on boards or in projects where they don't use one of those is just trying to deal with the email. The limitation that I found is that some of my people don't want to actually log in and look at these things online. They want to still only work them from their email, and then it starts to get harder for them to find the original files that are being talked about. So if you can, again, this is one where you need to train your board members or your volunteers to be willing to log on and look at one of these things online. But I love these things. In terms of cost, Asana is the winner with free, at least for your first 15 members. And if you're just using this for your first circle, kind of where you're engaging maybe just your board or just your project team, or I have a project set up for one of my science advisory committees on one project, and my what I call a network advisory committees on another project. So it's a good way to run that committee work, to try to get the homework done. The other thing I love about these is that they're really good for people can go into there on their own time and like look at the comments and respond when they have time to focus on their committee work. For conference calling, like Rick mentioned, there are many options. There's another one called In-Meeting that I've used with one of my water groups, where some of the board members go to Mexico or something for the winter. We've tried, so I have experience with Skype, GoToMeeting, Zoom, and Google Hangouts. And again, I'm going to talk about from the rural perspective, the ones that have, yes, you can also do sort of conference calling where people can dial in toll free, but then you have to pay the bill for that. So I much prefer online conference calling. And you'll notice we're on a Zoom webinar right now, so clearly we've chosen Zoom. The ones that work best in the rural areas are GoToMeeting and Zoom. Skype, I keep having problems with that in terms of the bandwidth it uses. I can't do it from Caslo. I kind of feel like we have Mexican internet up here, because I've had the same experience with when board members are in Mexico, or when I also use some of these working with students when I teach across rural areas across North America. I have, like, Zoom is just the most stable. So the thing that, so anyway, we've gone with Zoom because the GoToMeeting was more expensive. It's like $50 a month for a basic usable thing, and the Zoom for just the calling is $20 a month. And so we really like Zoom. That Google Hangouts, I haven't actually experimented with that yet, but it actually is free if you're going with the Google system. But it does require everybody to have a Gmail address, pretty much. You have to sort of either have an organizational email address for them, which starts to get into a larger system kind of thing. But it might be good if your organization is kind of larger than ours and you can get everyone on the same page technologically. So that's where we are. Does anybody have experience with these that you want to share? Oh, Rick.
Yeah,
Right.
GoToMeeting. I've had some experience with that, and it works. But you see, you're at a disadvantage because of where you are. In my unit here in this apartment building, I'm already on fiber optics, so I haven't got a problem with bandwidth. We've used GoToMeeting, and then there's other ones that I get from the U.S. I don't even remember the names of them. I just tune in and use them.
Yeah. It does start to, I notice that some people are less willing to have 3 or 4 little, what are they called? The widgets on their computer. So we like to stick with one. I have to say, in my own defense, we are trying to get fiber optic down here. I don't live right in downtown Caslow.
I think what you've done is very beneficial to the other people that are on this call, and would be very beneficial for me to share with some of the groups that I'm involved in. If you were to just highlight what the barriers are to using some of these readily available tools. A lot of people get turned off by the fact that they've got to go through passwords and they've got to go this and that and the other thing in order to use them. That's why GoToMeeting and some of these other ones are just a breeze, because you tune in, you don't have a lot of technical obstacles to overcome, or perceived technical obstacles to overcome. So you've done us a service by indicating some of the barriers.
Jody waved. I'm going to unmute you. There you go.
My demographic's very similar to your situation, where a lot of people don't have email still, and if they have an internet connection, it's very limited. So, I'm kind of looking at a lot of these options. Some of them are going to be great for the staff that have access to consistent email, but others, they won't have the physical capability, but also trying to get them to click on a link, that would be a miracle. So there's kind of this whole gamut of acceptance to technology that I also find that I'm really dealing with, and it's making me challenged on how to move forward with technology, because I need it. Like some of the solutions you're bringing today, I'm like, oh, I want this. Yes, this sounds great. I need to explore this more. But when I'm looking at my project team and I'm like, oh, yeah, it's kind of like, how do you engage that audience, right?
Absolutely. And I do think these are, a lot of these things are, I would work on my first circle and then think about the other circles
later.
Try to match, but your level of willingness to click on links and to download apps, and it's going to decrease. So the simpler you can keep things outside of the first circle, the better off you're going to be, right?
Down the road.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Oh, well, you're welcome. So, I think some of the solution, the thing that I'm really, really hoping that I can engage with, would get the watershed network headed towards, because again, every time you add a new technology that's not fully integrated with one of your other technologies, it increases your staff time, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm really keen on getting our first circle on the Google. And it would reduce our costs overall, because you can get nonprofit, what's called G Suite or Google for nonprofits. Once you go through a sort of approval process, it's free. Mm-hmm. But then that reduces your costs. But
it would depend, Tara, a lot on the skill sets of the people in that inner circle, eh?
Yeah. So I think it's a process with any organization, is figuring out how you're going to move forward on this. And with some groups, I just don't think that, when I think about, for example, the Community Forest Board, I just don't think, there was almost a revolution when the new manager brought some of these things in. Well, if I have to do all this, anyway.
Yeah.
So for the second circle, which is our event or occasional volunteers, the people that you really, really need, and hopefully come into your organization? How do you recruit people? Who are these? Where are they coming from? They're normally coming from your membership. So these are people that are, willing to contribute to the mission on occasion, and at least at first, probably don't want to participate in reviewing documents or anything like that. I took some training with, I think it's called Organize BC, one of those radical organizations. But they really talked about the importance of meeting one-on-one, regardless of, it doesn't matter about age or anything, but really meeting with people that you're hoping to recruit one-on-one and talking to them. But once you have the volunteer recruited, then you can start to use the group email and the conference call to possibly bring them in on your project management tools, maybe. But again, you're thinking, well, there's only certain things that they really need to know in order to be able to do their job. And so you can probably even just handle that on email. To me, the issues, back to those mission issues, recruitment, and then how much of a pain is it to be able to participate in your organization? That's ease of engagement. Oh, I already said one-on-one in-person communication is the most important for recruiting volunteers. And there's just no getting around that. Although I think visibility, whether it's in social media or in the community, is going to help. It's going to get those initial connections made. So to me, for that second circle, it's kind of a checklist when you're putting together, okay, what are we going to use for the first circle? Will our second circle be able to deal with some of that? Is, I think, the test for those choices. Now the third circle is where I'm talking about member and community communication, and here we're talking about the blog or the website or the regular emails. So from a communication standpoint, are we getting the message out to somewhere that the people that we're trying to reach are going to read it? So a message out. And is it easy for them to say yes or register or donate? And so these kinds of technologies in this domain are, website, group emails, social media. I'm going to mostly focus on group emails, because as websites are just a whole nest of other issues. So I thought I would just talk about those. I notice I'm getting very short of time here. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to attract new people. So we want something that's like visually appealing. This is where you start to get into some of those like real content issues. Are your values being expressed in a way that is going to attract new members who might not be willing to drink the Kool-Aid all at once, but they're like, I always think with water stewardship, I only want the people that drink water to join. So
what about fish?
Well, I want them to benefit, but I don't want them as members. I find fish very uncommunicative.
Yeah, they don't vote either.
They don't vote, and they don't influence decision makers in their community. But and here we're outside groups like the Canadian Freshwater Alliance does a lot of work on message, on shared values, because they're very active in this influence domain. And they'll probably be talking about that on our webinar on the 25th of April, like how are they crafting a message for across BC for supporting the kind of regulation that's going to enable more funds to come to watershed stewardship. I mean, those are the kinds of things that they're thinking about. How do we do that message? I'm thinking about in this, how do we at a reasonable cost, like free, get our information out in a way that members can easily engage with. And there's a whole set of technologies called CRMs, constituent relationship managers, and most of these are
Also called SNA.
oh, what's SMA stand for?
SNA, Social Network Analysis.
Social net. Well, I've never heard it called that. I'm talking about things like Nation Builder, where you have the software for it when you have more than 1,000 members and you pay quite a bit of money, and you can track whether, you know, when someone's birthday is and when did they last donate. And so very large membership organizations.
That's all SNA.
Okay, they use those. I imagine, so it sort of tracks engagement. What we do, like, again, we're under 500 members in the Watershed Network. We're mostly using our mail software and spreadsheets to track those kinds of things. So what we're looking for in terms of communications with that third circle, clear, visually engaging messages with clear actions in the trade, you know, the call to action in the message. The other one from a staff perspective is how easy is it to use, how easy is it to put my newsletter together, and is what I see when I'm done, is that what's going to go out to people, or are they going to see everything all messed up on their screen? Is your, so what is your email program linked to your website so that people can sign up for your newsletter? Can you track your membership using your email program? That's more of a society type question. And then are you integrating? Because when I first started the Watershed Network, I had to do different things with my images depending on what, you know, am I going to put it on the website? Am I going to put it on the mail program? I still have to do some of that. But this integration piece where you produce one thing and it can go on 3 or 4 of your platforms is really nice. It's a really good really good tool. Okay. Looking at the time. So again, we're relatively small in terms of some of that, you know, we can't afford, and it would be silly for us to invest in some of that bigger stuff. We have tried Constant Contact for newsletters with an additional spreadsheet. We tried MailChimp with an additional spreadsheet. We have the spreadsheet to track our group member involvement. And our experience with MailChimp is free at our level. So again, that's really irresistible. It also has better integration with our WordPress website, and it's pretty reasonable to use. So Jody, which thing do you use for your blog?
Same, MailChimp.
MailChimp.
Yep.
Yeah. For me, and again, we talked about this a little bit, the cross-cutting issues are learning time. And what we do in the Columbia Basin is we actually talk to our different networks, different member networks, and try to figure out kind of what is everybody else using, and so that then you have kind of a lower barrier for people. Because for each different one of those little names that I choose, you have just a little bit of learning time, maybe a password, you know, so you try to see what other people in your area are using. Things have to be easy to find, whatever the circle is. Can they find them and can they act on them? And the thing I've talked about a few times, integration. Can you do one thing and have it go in several directions? If you have a lack of integration, which is something that we've had, you just are spending more staff or volunteer time adjusting files, file types. You know, you're working for the computer instead of working for your mission, is how I kind of think about it. And then for me, cost is always important. But if you can get something that fits your people and your people love to use it, then this is such an important area that you might want to spend the money, even though there's some great free solutions. So I think I've talked about this. I just want to get I'm almost at the end, so that's good. as more of our people become more comfortable with working online, it is possible to start thinking about some of these what I would think of as organizational solutions. In looking through this, I've watched a million YouTube videos, thinking about can we get everybody onto the sort of the Google G Suite that would help integrate our website with everything else. But so far, we're not quite there. Are the people in your circles willing to have, and manage their special email for this organization? And are they willing to join one of these, board, one of these big integrated solutions? So I did want to mention TechSoup Canada for those of you who are in nonprofits, and it doesn't count. It's not for health organizations, I have to say, Diana. But yeah. Sorry, let me just mute that phone. Okay. And if you have any questions, you can email me, and I'll see if I have a good answer or a good lead. Does anybody have some final thoughts or questions?
Tara, if you give me a call after this is over, I can share some research that I did for the Okanagan Nation Alliance on community engagement and outreach. I picked the brains of a consulting team in Australia for some very, very useful things. Also, if you just call me, I can share some of my own project management experiences with you.
That sounds good. It also sounds like something that Jody and possibly Diana would want to hear about.
Well, what I'll do is I'll tell you where to look, and I'll tell you what the links are, and you can do your own homework on it. It was fascinating to find out that the Australians have done the amount of work that they've done on community outreach and engagement, because they're confronted with all these rural issues all over the country.
Yeah.
Anyhow, for what it's worth, I'll give it to you after we're off the air.
Okay. Would you guys like to get that link in an email?
It's about 8 links.
Okay, super. Diana, are you interested in that? Okay, cool. I will send a follow-up email with the links from Rick. I will use the message line, links from Rick.
Are you also going to send out your slides?
Would you like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would.
Super. I will do that.
The other resource that I learned to tap back in the 90s is the US EPA has a Watershed Academy. And in that, they have some case studies, about 10 case studies, and their top 10 lessons learned. I keep sending that to new watershed groups, because it's a history of groups like yours, Tara, that have gone through the battle scars, and here's what they found. And if you just Google US EPA Watershed Academy top 10 list, you can just see there's just so much common sense there from those case studies. None of them, by the way, are as advanced as you are in exploring technology.
Well, the Columbia Basin, for you guys in Manitoba, like the Columbia Basin goes all the way from the Alberta border and the US border up to, well, you're not going to recognize this place.
Astoria, Oregon. Astoria,
Well,
Oregon.
I'm talking about in my territory. My territory is just the Canadian portion of the Columbia Basin that doesn't include the Okanagan. It's a political barrier. But anyway, it's a huge area.
The other thing that you've tried very hard to establish here today, and again, I'm talking both from my nonprofit experiences, my public service experiences, and my private sector experiences. I started as a systems analyst trainee with McDonnell Douglas, where project management basically is cause célèbre for the whole company. And the key that we found with all levels of management was to make your project management task visible. In other words, make the project visible somehow. You talked about Gantt charts. They used to use network-based project management. And by making it visible, you could bring people that didn't even speak English in from a supplier and show them the project plan and say, now look, here's what we're talking about for your circle. And it seemed to work, especially when you're under the kind of business pressures that you were under. I find that with nonprofit groups, it's a little harder to get them to create a visible project plan because of the skill sets. But once it's created and it's visible and it's up on the wall and everybody can see it, we get a lot of lights going on. Aha, oh, that's what you're talking about. So for what it's worth.
Well, and also, I see my part in that is so important.
Yeah,
Go from that big picture vision to like, what could I actually do to help? It's like really important to recruiting volunteers who maybe don't want to devote their life to figuring out what you're talking about.
What I encourage the Kettle River Watershed Management Plan Management Authority to do, they have a coordinator like you, Jessica Mace. You probably met her or spoken to her.
Yeah.
What I've encouraged her to do is to put that plan in a form which shows us, you know, what is happening, what's the timelines, and color code it so we've got high, middle, and low priorities. And it seems to help the people understand what it is we're focusing on now and why. In other words, our timing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. I'll get those follow-ups.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. I wanted to, just before we close, like, thank you so much, Tara. I think I got a lot out of this.
So did I.
Yeah. And Diana, I'm actually surprised. I have I'm also from Manitoba, Southeast, and we seal abandoned wells. And when you seal an abandoned well, it reduces the potential of contamination for drinking water. So we've actually had people that have gotten sick in our area that have gone to the doctor, and the doctor has said, go to the St. River Conservation District, get them to test your water, and if there's coliform or E. coli, then that's the evidence of your sickness. So I think there is a really strong tie between health and watershed management that we doesn't always register. So I'm very excited that you're here and wanting to learn more. And if I have a lot that I've been through. If you want to talk to me more, I'd be more than happy to.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Tara.
Thank you, Tara.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.